Hey, I'm Red, and today I'm gonna show you how to take that repetitive dark piano sound that No Return by Polo has and use it to make better beats of your own. I'll also give you some free loops if you stick to the end. With that said, let's begin. Okay, the first thing I want to show you before you decide if you want to take my advice on this is the final melody I came up with using the simple step shown later in this video. If you like the melody, then stick around because I got a bunch of tips for you. Anyways, here's the melody. No Return's melody has two main elements, and those are the repetitive piano progression and the string instruments. So let's start with the piano. For the sound selection on this part, I'll be using the Format Piano preset on Xband 2. The first thing you want to add is a BPM of around 155. This will help set in the dark vibe. This is the MIDI of the beat I just played you. I know this may seem complex, but it's actually very simple to recreate. Let's start with the chords hidden in here. This progression is supposed to be repetitive. That's part of what makes dark melodies feel dark. So usually what you want is to make a melody in these 2 bars and copy and paste it again in these 2 bars. Maybe adding a few changes, but the main part should simply repeat. With that in mind, let's add our chords here. The trick I'm going to use to build our chords is a trick I've shown you before. We're going to use our emotional 1 to 6 progression. That means that we're going to start a chord on 1, which means the first note of the scale, and end it on 6, which is the 6th note of the scale. But instead of going up to the 6th, we're going to go down to the 6th octave. This progression will 10 out of 10 times give you an emotional feeling. And now for the dark vibes, let's copy and paste it. To fill in the chords, just skip one tonic note and add a note right after. And do that once again on every single note here. Done! Now, as we always do, step 2 is to highlight the thirds and move them up 1 octave. Now, you may be thinking, if I use this chord progression too, all my beats will end up sounding the same. Well, that's not the case. There are only so many chord progressions available to us. After all, the minor scale only has 7 of them. Chord progressions will repeat. It is what you do after you have your chords that counts. In other words, here's where the uniqueness starts. Usually I start adding some extra top notes. Since this is supposed to be repetitive, I'll add some notes here and copy that same pattern here. For our second chord, instead of staying in the same spot like we did here, I'll add an ascending progression so that it doesn't feel like it's going nowhere. Now copy and paste that. I'll change this last part though. Usually when I end my second bar going up, I like to end my fourth going down for contrast. It just helps make the melody feel done. And now all that's left is to add depth to this. A great way to do that is to replace some chordal notes, the lower ones. So I'll play a root and fifth after each other to complement the top melody. And lastly, some extra touches here to make it feel more interesting. And that's about it for the piano progression. Now we can move on to the strings. For the sound selection on this part, I'll be using the Soft Strings preset on Labs, which is a free VST by the way. For starters, I want to add a bit of bass, so I'll play the same root notes of our chords like this. Now, using the solo violin preset on Xband 2, I'll add a simple violin melody. Since our piano progression already sounds pretty full, we don't need a very complex top melody. We can keep it simple. In this case, I'll just add a 4-note progression in the first bar and leave the rest pretty much empty. But if you want, I also would recommend leaving the beginning empty and adding your melody in the last bar. For this progression, I am using the same notes from our chords. This would be the root note, this would be the fifth, and this would be the third from our piano chords. My recommendation here is that you use primarily chordal notes. Now let's add some generic trap drums. And that's about it. Now all we need is a halftime effect on the intro, some transition effects, and done. That's how to make a dark repetitive melody like No Return by Polo G. Before I play you the final beat, if you want to download the melody loop I made in this video, there's a free download link in the description. It's royalty free, so you can use it however you want. I make 2 beat breakdowns a week, so if you want more tips on how to make better melodies, subscribe, and as always, see ya.